An ecosystem functions as a self-sustaining thermodynamic machine where every living and non-living component interacts to support life. This machine is built on two pillars. You have abiotic components, the physical factors like sunlight, temperature, and water, and biotic components, which are all the living organisms. To map its operation, we have to track how energy naturally moves through the system via the 10% law, and how human-made chemicals disrupt that balance. Understanding environmental collapse begins with the strict mathematical rules that govern how an ecosystem survives. The structure of this machine relies on trophic levels. A trophic level is the specific feeding position an organism occupies within its ecosystem. At the base are the producers. These are autotrophs, like green plants and algae, that convert raw solar energy into chemical energy through photosynthesis. Look at this 3D ecological energy pyramid. Producers capture a mere 1% of solar energy falling on their leaves. That converted energy transfers upwards. Herbivores eat producers. Carnivores, in the secondary and tertiary levels, then eat those herbivores. A direct linear sequence of these energy transfers is called a food chain. But in reality, multiple food chains intersect to form a network known as a food web. Organisms rarely rely on a single food source. The multiple pathways within a food web provide an ecosystem with stability, creating a buffer against sudden population fluctuations or environmental disruptions. The flow of this energy is strictly unidirectional. Once solar energy enters the food chain, it moves upward, but it can never return to the sun or cycle backward. The efficiency of this upward flow is governed by a mathematical bottleneck known as Lindemann's 10% law of energy transfer. The law states that only 10% of the energy available at one trophic level is passed on to become biomass at the next level. In this linear food chain, grass starts with 10,000 joules. 90% is lost as heat. The grasshopper receives 1,000 joules. The deficit compounds. The frog extracts 100 joules, and the snake receives a mere 10 joules. This exact thermodynamic inefficiency dictates biological limits. Because there is so little energy left to support extra levels, food chains are physically limited to a maximum of 3 or 4 steps. While ecosystems are inefficient at transferring energy, they are highly effective at concentrating human-made chemicals, a process called biological magnification. Consider agricultural runoff. To protect crops, massive quantities of pesticides like DDT are sprayed across fields, which inevitably wash off into local water systems. These chemicals are non-biodegradable. Microscopic aquatic organisms absorb them, but possess no natural enzymes capable of breaking them down. This aquatic food chain illustrates the consequence. Watch the red dots representing toxins. As small fish eat plankton and larger fish eat them, the concentration multiplies. Because humans sit at the top, our bodies accumulate the highest concentrations. In 1950s Japan, residents around Minamata Bay consumed seafood contaminated by industrial mercury. The resulting neurological damage, Minamata disease, demonstrated the severe consequences of biomagnification. Sitting at the top of the food chain yields the lowest amount of natural energy while carrying the highest biological risk from human pollution. The persistence of human chemicals reaches far beyond local food webs. 15 to 30 kilometers up in the stratosphere lies the ozone layer. This layer acts as a planetary shield, absorbing the sun's highly damaging ultraviolet radiation before it can reach the surface. Watch how nature maintains this shield. A high-energy UV beam strikes a standard O2 molecule, splitting it into 2 highly reactive oxygen atoms. One free atom quickly binds with an intact O2 molecule, creating a 3-atom cluster, O3 or ozone. But synthetic chemicals disrupt this process. For decades, industries utilized chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs, in standard refrigerators, fire extinguishers, and household aerosols. When CFCs drift into the stratosphere, UV light breaks them down to release reactive chlorine atoms. A single chlorine atom can catalytically destroy thousands of ozone molecules, faster than the natural oxygen cycle can replace them. As the ozone layer thins, surface UV radiation spikes. This increases rates of skin cancer and cataracts in humans, while destroying the marine phytoplankton that form the base of oceanic food webs. In response to this threat, the international community enacted the Montreal Protocol in 1987, freezing CFC production worldwide and halting the runaway depletion of the ozone layer. The disparity between natural nutrient cycles and industrial waste accumulation comes down to the chemistry of decomposition. In a natural cycle, decomposers, like bacteria and fungi, break down biodegradable waste, such as dead plants and animals, returning raw nutrients to the soil for producers to reuse. Human-made non-biodegradable wastes, plastics, synthetic pesticides, and CFCs, bypass this cycle. Biological organisms do not possess the enzymes required to break them down. Because these synthetic substances persist, they trigger chemical biomagnification in our food webs and ozone destruction in our stratosphere. Reversing this damage requires industrial solutions, proper disposal through controlled incineration, and adopting the framework to reduce, reuse, and recycle materials before they ever enter an ecosystem. When evaluating environmental impacts, trace the disruption back to the foundational structure of energy flow and food chains. That is where the impact is most clearly understood.